you going through a legal battle? Well, then you probably don't want one of the lawyers that John and I have talked about here. Instead, try the Hemmat Law Group. They're one of the best reputed family law firms of Washington State, and we are proud to partner with them. Hemmat Law Group can help with divorce, custody, protection orders, harassment, and much more. Go to hemmatlaw.com. That's HEMMAT law.com.
Welcome back to Gossip Without Prejudice. Another week, the podcast where the audience already knows what we do, so why don't we do these intros? My name is John. Lindsay's name is Lindsay.
Hello.
Lindsay, how you feeling?
I'm really happy. We're having a great day today, and apparently we've got a very silly story to cover.
But we've got an incredibly silly story to cover.
And today, John's going to tell the story, not me.
Yes.
Mix it up a little bit.
We're changing things up. Firstly, I wanted to give a huge thank you to the audience. We have hundreds of downloads as of only our ninth episode or whatever we're on now.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a small audience, but it is already far more attention than we ever anticipated getting.
Yes.
So we always want to start with a thank you.
Thank you.
And then we want to end that thank you with libertarians. Lindsay, do you know what a libertarian is?
I believe a libertarian is someone who believes that less government is better.
Yes. So libertarianism is a political philosophy, and I'm quoting from Webster's dictionary here,
Okay.
is a political philosophy that holds freedom and liberty as primary values. They advocate for the expansion of individual autonomy and political self-determination, in emphasizing principles of equality before the law and protection of civil rights, including the rights of freedom of association, freedom of press, speech, and freedom of choice.
Sounds good.
They're also famous for booing Gary Johnson at the 2016 Libertarian National Convention for suggesting people should have driver's licenses.
Really?
So yes.
Wow.
I should show you that clip sometime.
Yeah, that's.
But they take
the reaction.
the idea of liberty to such an extreme. They're extreme small government activists. There are 737,972 registered members as of 2024.
It's plenty of people.
So libertarians have also never had a chance to govern anywhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's only ever been.
Yeah, they come out of the woodwork every 4 years, complain about taxes, and then scurry back into their bunkers. And I say that because as much as I respect their principles, they often take it far too far when given the chance to actually rule by majority. And that's where we have today's story, where we talk about the town of Grafton.
Grafton, okay.
The story of Grafton. Are you ready to jump into it?
I'm so ready. I'm so excited to hear this.
So they've never had a chance. Libertarians, as an organized national party, have never had a chance to govern, though they have occasionally claimed independence, 1 or 2 independent seats in Congress. But in terms of majority rule of a municipality, this actually happened in the mid-2000s in New Hampshire.
Okay, New Hampshire.
Grafton had a population at a time of 1,385. Excuse me, now has a population of 1,385.
Okay, so it's still a pretty dang small town.
It's a very small town, and a federation of small government enthusiasts set their eyes on the municipality as their new battleground for freedom.
Oh.
So a little bit of background. New Hampshire is the live free or die state.
Okay.
Imposing neither an income nor a sales tax, and boasting, among many other things, the highest per capita rate of machine gun ownership on the planet.
What?
Yes.
Boasting. I see. Wow.
Historically, the specific town, Grafton, its economic base consisted of subsistence farming, small-scale industry, and mining.
Okay.
As early as 1777, Grafton citizens were asking the government to be spared taxes, and when they were not, they just fucking stopped paying them. So
I see. So there's a real this culture exists.
It's already pretty close. Yeah, exactly.
Libertarian ground zero.
This town became the epicenter of the so-called Free Town Project.
Okay, I like the name.
Yeah, part social experiment, part beacon to the faithful. The New Republic called it Galt's Gulch meets New Jerusalem.
Wait. Can you say that phrase again, please?
Galt's Gulch meets New Jerusalem. Now, these people had found one another largely over the internet, this coalition that's beginning to form in the early aughts, posting manifestos, engaging in utopian daydreaming on other online message boards, r/libertarian activities, right? While they are fractious, an unwavering belief in free association and the free market, statism is universally their mortal enemy. And I say that in quotes because that's what they call it.
Okay.
In the form of government interference above all, taxes bad, no taxes good. They drew particular inspiration from a series of micronation projects in the 1970s and 1980s in the Pacific and Caribbean oceans. Projects, I should herald, did not pan out.
Yeah, I was
None
gonna
of them worked.
ask. No, okay. So you're modeling your base for successful government off of governments that were not successful. Got it.
Yes. This is a case study on how ideology in the pursuit of freedom, both individual and economic, is in fact a recipe for impoverishment and disaster.
Okay.
Now, we pull from a couple of works, but most notably the book A Libertarian Walks into a Bear, The Utopian Dream to Liberate an American Town by Matthew Honglitz Hetling.
Beautiful title.
Now, he's an accomplished journalist based in Vermont, a Pulitzer Prize nominee, and a George Polk Award winner. We also pull from the article called The Town That Went Feral from the New Republic. So thank you to our sources.
Thank you.
And that brings us to a man named John Babiars. Now, John Babiars is a former software developer who decamped from the big government hellscape of Connecticut. You know, those Connecticut's and
their bureaucracy.
Their government. Yeah, exactly. In the 1990s, he left to homestead in New Hampshire with his equally freedom-loving wife, Rosaline.
That's quite the switch. Software engineer to homesteader.
Yeah, almost as if they had driven, quote, almost as if they had driven through a time warp and into New England's revolutionary days when freedom outweighed fealty and trees outnumbered taxes. The two built a life for themselves, with John eventually coming to head Grafton's volunteer fire department, which he described as mutual aid.
Yeah, that's admirable.
And running for governor on a libertarian ticket.
Okay.
Which he failed.
Okay.
Yeah, he failed at.
Sorry, John.
Now, this guy's important because he became one of the first to move to Grafton under what's called the Free State Project.
Okay.
Actually, at the time, it was called the Freetown Project. We'll come back to that later. But
did he found the project?
Yep.
Okay.
It was like a handful of guys, but he was like the head guy.
Cool.
And it's basically the idea to finally fucking get some libertarians in charge, move to a place, and take it over.
Wow. It's pretty ballsy.
Yeah. So he connected in 2004. He and Rosaline connected with a small group of libertarian activists. Grafton, with almost no zoning laws and paired with low civic participation, was the perfect place to create an intentional community based on facts and logic and free market principles. They had found their small town where they could elbow into the existing citizenry and take over the local government and then destroy it.
Wow.
The land was cheap. Yep. So it was easy to basically colonize after buying large amounts of it.
Just suck it all up.
And you could build almost anything on it.
That's where the zoning laws come in, right? So you could build a commercial space, or you could build a house, or you could build nothing at all.
Yes.
Right? You could build a playground. You could build a torture center. Who
anything, knows?
Right?
We're actually getting to that.
Oh, geez.
At the time, the town had fewer than 800 registered voters and a population of only about 1,000.
Really small town.
And plenty of property for sale as well. John and others reasoned it would not take much for a group of transplants to come in and establish a foothold.
Yeah.
Now, the libertarians, when they actually showed up and started doing this by large numbers, I will describe shortly, they increased the size of the town significantly.
Which can be a problem for infrastructure.
It's going to be a big problem for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
The libertarians expected, as they showed up to be greeted as liberators. But from the first town meeting, they faced the inconvenient reality that many of Grafton's presumably freedom-loving citizens saw them as outsiders first and compatriots second, if at all.
It's such a no-brainer to me. Of course, if you're planning to come in and conquer this town, the people who were there beforehand don't want you to conquer their town.
And it's because, so I'm going to walk you through, what some of these other ringleaders were like to maybe shed some light on why the local populace was not thrilled to see them.
Sure.
One of the other original masterminds of the plan, Larry Pendarvis. Yeah, his name's Larry. He had made his intention clear that once he took Grafton was theirs, he intended to create a space honoring the freedom to traffic organs, the right to hold duels, and the God-given right to organize so-called bum fights. That's a quote.
The God-given right to organize bum fights?
He also bemoaned the persecution of the victimless crime that is consensual cannibalism. Pretty sick.
Wow.
Huge W from Larry.
All of those are just straight from left field.
Yeah, well, here's what's really funny. While Pendarvis eventually had to take his mail-order Filipina bride, true story, bride business, and dreams of municipal takeover elsewhere, See also Texas. He went to Texas.
Yeah. Yep,
His
not
comrades in the Freetown Project actually remained. So he showed up in Grafton and then he left quickly.
He gave up.
Relatively quickly. Well, he didn't give up. He went on to future pastures. And if we have time in this episode, I will tell you what that means.
Okay.
He shows up in a sequel.
Oh, geez,
but he fucks off to Texas for the time being.
Okay. Good.
Soon, the Freetowners convinced themselves that evidence and retractions of Pendarvis's notwithstanding, the project must actually enjoy the support of a silent majority of freedom-loving Graftonites. And so the libertarians just kept coming.
Oh, man.
The problem, they were overwhelmingly opinionated single men with large numbers of firearms.
Sounds about right.
The people who joined the Freetown Project in the first 5 years were described as free radicals by their own description, men with either too much money or not enough. With either capital to burn or nothing to lose, it created quite a profile of individuals. And I'm going to walk you through a few more of the people.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. I imagine you'd find you have no clue what sort of person you would find in this organization.
There was John Connell of Massachusetts, who arrived on a mission from God, liquidated his savings, and bought the historic Grafton Center meeting house, transforming it into, quote, the Peaceful Assembly Church.
Wow. And so they bought the local community center and turned that into their church.
An endeavor that mixed garish folk art, strange rants from its new pastor, Connell himself, and a quixotic quest to secure tax exemption from the IRS while also refusing its authority to do so. So, yeah, it was a tax scheme.
Of course.
It was a cult of personality tax scheme. And then there was Adam Franz, described a self-described anti-capitalist who set up a tent city to serve as a planned community of survivalists.
Wow.
Even though no one who joined had any bushcraft skills, as far as anyone could tell. Richard Agnall, an anti-circumcision activist known as the Dick Angel, presumable father to the notorious Doge staffer Edward Korenstein, a.k.a. Big Balls.
That's I just learned about this guy the other day.
Well, we have no information to confirm they're related, but I refuse to believe they can't be related.
This follows incredibly well. As I like to say, this jives.
So these guys came by the hundreds to this tiny town, making homes out of yurts, RVs, trailers and tents, geodesic domes, and shipping containers. Literally anything they can get their hands on.
Wow. Geodesic domes and shipping containers along with tents and RVs. That place must have looked really wild.
So I'm going to read you a quote from Hans Hetling's notes. And it reads, quote, busybodies and statists need stay out of the way. And so the Freetowners spent years pursuing an aggressive program of governmental takeover and deregulation. To delegitimize the government, their appetite for litigation was matched only by their enthusiasm for cutting public services. They slashed the town's already tiny yearly budget of $1 million by 30%.
Oof. That's a huge portion.
Obliged the town to fight legal test case after test case, and staged absurd standoffish encounters with the sheriff to rack up YouTube hits and views.
No.
Grafton was a poor town to begin with, but with tax revenue dropping even as the population expanded by almost 20%, things got steadily worse. Potholes multiplied, domestic disputes proliferated, violent crime spiked, and the town workers started going without heat.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Despite several promising efforts, Hong Hetzling dryly notes, a robust Randian private sector failed to emerge to replace the public service. That's in reference to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, which is a libertarian thought leader from the previous century. Despite her long opposition to government assistance, she died alone and on government assistance.
Interesting.
Yes, I should talk more about her at a later date. But the theory behind libertarianism is that the government backs off, someone will step up to provide a better service than the government ever could.
And that did not happen.
That straight up did not happen. Nope, that absolutely didn't happen.
Man. I keep thinking about those poor residents who were there beforehand and all this crap they had to put up with.
So, and then instead, Grafton became, quote, a haven for miserable people.
Like Alaska.
And the town went mad. And now enter stage right bears. So bears are actually the downfall of this libertarian experiment.
Not the government?
Not the government. No, it's the bears. The bears come to town. So the woods of North America are home to some 750,000 black and brown bears.
That's a lot of bears.
On average, there is at most one human fatality from a black bear attack per year.
Okay.
So it's like...
So they're not really violent creatures usually.
They're not violent creatures usually.
Unless you... Probably those are instances of someone aggressing with the bear.
The black bears in Grafton were not like other black bears. So they were unusually bold.
Yeah, because the town is so small and it's just a farming and mining town, the bears have never been afraid of these people before, I would guess. Something else?
So let me just say... They started hanging out in yards and on patios in broad daylight.
Okay.
They were not scared of gunshots, loud noises, or attempts of residents to shoo them off. Livestock and pets began disappearing at an alarming rate. One girl was playing with her kitten on her lawn when a bear came out of the woods, grabbed 2 of the kittens, and ate them right in front of her. These...
Oh my god, that poor girl!
Black bears can scent food 7 times farther away than a trained bloodhound.
Wait, really?
Can lift hundreds of pounds
Mm-hmm.
and run in sprints of dozens of miles an hour for short periods. When the bears started mauling humans, they actually attacked 2 women in their home. It was clear that some sort of menace had been unleashed.
Wow.
Now, we're actually not historically 100% sure what caused the bears to suddenly become so aggressive in this libertarian haven. Was it the lack of zoning resulting incursions into bear habitats? The reluctance of Graftonites to pay for, let alone mandate, bear-proof garbage bins? The libertarian government was just like, yeah, put your garbage wherever. Might the bears be deranged? Perhaps even disinhibited and emboldened by toxoplasmosis infections picked up from eating trash and pet waste from unsecured bins? It was never really made clear.
Sure.
However... Whatever the cause, this government was uniquely unprepared to face the challenge.
Extremely so, I would imagine. Because the bears aren't afraid of the guns. And these guys' love is their guns.
Well, especially since the townspeople were feeding the bears.
Oh, no, they were?
Because they could. More or less because they could. Some people were just feeding the bears.
Such a dangerous game.
One woman said that she had taken to welcoming bears on her property for regular feasts of sugared donuts.
Donuts?
Yeah, she was just the bear fucking
cute.
bear whisperer. And then there were people who questioned whether anything should be done at all, even if there was a problem. After all, if other people were troubled by bears, that wasn't their problem.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Oh my gosh. What brutal disregard for your neighbors.
And Rosalind, the
wife of our guy John,
of one of the ringleaders, she was quoted as saying, "Some people don't get the responsibility side of being libertarians." So basically, she's kind of a hypocrite here because
seriously, how about the responsibility for protecting your neighbors from the bears that you might have encouraged?
So
that's crazy.
So the utopian experiment was caught in a conundrum.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted something done, but no one wanted to assume the thankless and tedious and maybe expensive task of actually doing it.
Sounds about
so
right.
It created a massive tragedy of the commons. The New Republic reads, "Pressed by bears without an ideologically..." I need to get better at reading quotes.
No. Just take a breath before you do it. Tongue, it's the tongue, right? Your tongue gets all blah, 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 blah. So you gotta relax the tongue muscles.
All right, cut that out. Pressed by bears without and ideological infighting from within, because they're all fucking calling themselves not libertarian enough. You know how libertarians, yeah. The Freetown Project began to collapse in on itself.
And how long was this after the beginning?
It sort of didn't have a specific end,
but
sort of petered out.
Things slowly started to collapse.
Well, it collapsed quickly at first, and then it sort of lost a bunch of steam.
Okay.
The reason it sort of petered out is, and we'll get to this shortly, they were caught in pitched battles over who was living truly free, but free in the right way. So they were only united by this anti-government, but they were not united. They were only against something.
Yeah, they were all against each other as well as being against the government.
The libertarians descended into accusing one another of statism.
Oh, messy.
Some kept feeding the bears.
No.
Some built traps. Others holed up in their homes. And still others went everywhere toting increasingly larger caliber handguns.
Yikes.
After one particularly vicious attack, a shadowy posse formed and shot more than a dozen bears in their dens. This effort, which was thoroughly illegal, only put a dent in the population and ultimately did nothing to solve the bear
not
problem.
A whole lot of animals. And if you're going into their space to kill them, that's not going to do anything to stop them from coming into your space to kill you.
So when and here's why this never had a specific end date, the Freetown Project, when a similar project called the Free State Project, which actually still has a website right now, rose to prominence, encouraging libertarians to move to New Hampshire in general, but not Grafton specifically.
Okay.
The Freetown Project sort of lost a lot of its wind because this thing sort of like came along and sort of supplanted it, and so people started filtering out. But here are the men who I mentioned earlier. I have the endings of some of their stories.
Ooh, okay.
So after losing a last-ditch effort to secure tax exemptions,
for the church, right?
Yeah, the church, Mr. Church guy, the financially ruined Connell found himself unable to keep the heat on at his meeting house.
Yeah.
And in the midst of a brutal winter, he waxed apocalyptic and then died in a fire he created in his living room. Big government could not mandate fireplaces, so he burned himself to death.
Wow.
That guy with the survivalist commune, he quit it.
Okay.
Which soon walled itself off into a prison-like compound, the better to enjoy freedom.
What? Huh? What? Huh?
Yeah, they didn't like how anyone else was free, so they built a prison camp for themselves.
Hey, man. To each their own, I guess.
And John Babiars, the erstwhile inaugurator of the project, became the target of relentless vilification by his former ideological cohorts.
Oh, no, not even like the media. It's his cohort.
Yeah, so the libertarians descended into infighting.
They turned on him.
Who did not appreciate his refusal to let them enjoy unsecured blazes of high wildfire risk afternoons, sometimes in their living rooms. Rest in peace, Connell.
What? Wow.
So this petered out over like the following 2 years after 2004.
Okay.
The current Free State Project, as of 2016, is actually still alive.
Well, sure, because that sounds a little bit more reasonable. Just New Hampshire.
20,000 people have signed the statement of intent to move to New Hampshire.
Wow.
In the 2017-2018 term of the 400-member New Hampshire House of Representatives, 17 seats were held by the Free Staters.
Wow.
But in classic libertarian fashion, as of May 2022, only about 6,232 of those participants have actually moved.
All right. So a little over 1/4 of them actually followed through.
Which is about 6,000 people, which, spoiler alert, is not enough to influence local politics.
Yeah, New Hampshire's a full-on state.
I also think that of those 20,000 people, many of them were actually probably already in New Hampshire.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because there's a pledge to live in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
not necessarily
that's
move
pretty
there.
easy if you're already there.
Now, remember that fucking guy who moved to Texas?
Yeah, the one, Larry.
So 2005.
With his Filipino wife.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Mentone, Texas.
Okay.
Mentone is in Loving County.
Okay.
At the time, the least populous county in the United States.
Wow.
3 men, Lawrence Pendarvis, that's the guy you knew.
Lawrence.
2 more characters, Bobby Emery and Don Duncan, claimed to have bought 126 acres, 51 hectares, of land and registered to vote there.
Okay.
Later, the sheriff determined that the land was not sold at all, and no deed had been filed in the county courthouse or with the registrar. The sheriff contacted the sellers, who said the land had been sold to other buyers, after which the sheriff filed misdemeanor charges against the 3 men and threatened to arrest them if they returned. And they were chased out of town.
Wow. Were they living on that land?
They were absolutely living on that land.
Wow. That's crazy.
So
imagine lying about a purchase that could be tracked by a government official.
This is a fantastic. I wanted to talk about this story.
Yeah.
Because this is a fantastic microcosm of what happens when ideological purity takes priority over pretty much everything else.
Justice.
Yeah, exactly.
And well-being.
The American way. You know? What are your thoughts after hearing that story?
You know, their at first thought, their goal, I think there's something to be admired about it in a way. They're striving, they have this idea, and they want to come together as a group and build this community, but then the execution is just failure. Just an F. Just an F. When the infighting gets going, that's when it really becomes a failure in my mind. Because if these people are fighting against each other, they are all that they have. And so if they're fighting against each other, then they have nothing.
I think it's also sad for the Graftonites themselves.
Extremely.
Because the Graftonites,
they're victims.
who were there originally, were kind of just like run over.
Yeah, stampeded.
Yeah, well, it's why we have a republic. Because we have a republic to prevent large numbers of the majority from basically just trampling all over the 49%. And that's why things are so difficult to get through the House and Congress at a national level. And this is why so many people talk about this tiny town in 2004, because it's a perfect microcosm for what happens when shit runs awry. Right?
Yeah, that can basically be theoretically scaled to an entire country.
And I think it's been said, Brennan, a gentleman I listen to a lot on podcasts, he used to run Critical Role.
Hey.
Is he?
Oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah. He said that personality predates ideology, which means before you were a moron or a fascist or a dick, you were a bully.
Yeah, totally.
And
definitely.
I think this is a fantastic way to sort of microcosm that.
Yeah, all of these, it's what I see as a lot of ego. This is all about ego. This is a bunch of people with big egos coming together and trying to force their egos together, but there's no way that could have worked. And so it just ends up in clash and kaboom. It also strikes me as just a little immature.
Well, you don't want to wall yourself? I love that they fed the bears. They fed the bears.
Feeding the bears?
The guy, shout out to the guy.
That's a no-brainer.
Who burned himself to death.
That was
crazy. Heating his own house.
It wasn't a purposeful. It wasn't.
I can only presume no.
We can presume that he simply wanted a warm home, ended up accidentally unaliving himself to get warmth.
Let me actually. Okay, so
wow.
This guy does not seem above burning himself to death to own the libs.
Yeah.
Hold on.
It's one hell of a kamikaze.
Yeah, right.
It's one way to go out. Not to disrespect this man's death or life, but pretty pointless way to go out, if you ask me.
I'm looking it up.
If your aim is to send a message, I don't think that really many messages could be sent other than, so he sacrificed his life for nothing?
So here we go. Grafton fire victim identified from WMUR9 ABC. It's a local network in New Hampshire.
Thank you.
The identity of the man killed in fire in Grafton was released on Wednesday. This is a very old news story.
Yeah, what year is it from?
This was released in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
so he burned, to be clear, he burned to death sometime later.
Gotcha.
The identity of a man killed in a fire in Grafton was released Wednesday while investigators continue to try to determine what caused the fire. The body of John Connell, 57, of Grafton, was found Tuesday inside the historic church building on Main Street. It's not actually a church, it's just a historic church building. Because remember, he couldn't get the tax exemption. Residents said Connell lived in the building and had been holding church services. Here we go. But the town said it wasn't a legitimate church, and in recent days, it had made a move to take the building back.
Oh, the town wanted the building back from him.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Town officials, this is after they shook the Libertarians.
If I can't have this building, no one can have this building.
Town officials said they were in shock that the building, which dates back to the 1700s, was heavily damaged in the fire.
Oh, man.
You get, quote, you get conditioned to the fact that it will always be there, and of course, nothing is permanent.
Oh. So, wow. And another thing that those poor folks of Grafton lost because of these people.
Grafton fire chief said at the peak of the fire he thought they might need to bring an excavator to burn the building down or tear the building down, but firefighters were able to keep the building standing, which will allow the fire marshal to conduct a thorough investigation.
Good.
They later found out he burned himself to death starting a fire voluntarily in his not church, which was pretty sick.
I mean, if you really want to be remembered, I think that's a great way to be remembered, and nothing else. That guy who yeah, and nothing else, because you're remembered and that's it.
Yo, people are gonna hear about this.
You're not necessarily respected, you're not necessarily admired or loved, but you are remembered. Yeah, so John, at least you got that.
Connell was one of the people of all time.
Yeah, he was one of the people.
He was one of the people.
Wow, this story is all over the place. Well, I was not before we started recording, we were talking about bears, libertarians and bears. That sounds fun. Let's do it. Fire. I was not expecting fire and potholes.
Rock beats scissors.
Bear beats libertarian.
Scissors beats paper. It's like libertarian beats fire. Fire beats libertarian.
Yeah.
Bears presumably beat both.
Libertarians. Yeah. Graftonites beat libertarians. Hopefully.
Do you have any final thoughts before we move on to our next segment?
Folks, don't feed wildlife.
Don't get wildlife advice from a podcast.
Yes, both things. Don't get legal advice from a podcast. Don't get legal advice from wildlife, and don't get wildlife advice from a legal podcast. Thank you.
Do you know who can get advice from a podcast?
Is it our sponsors?
It's our product. It's the sponsors that offer products and services that are part of this podcast. And we're now excited to announce that we actually have our first long-term sponsorship partner. LTBE is now sponsored by Quimbee Bar Prep. So shout out to the Quimbee team. Thank you so much for bringing us on board. They're going to be supplying the bar questions from here on out, so I don't have to go looking for them.
And that way we know that they're going to be good questions.
It's been.
Thank you so much, Quimbee. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's actually been crazy to get sponsorship. After right now, it's only like our second week of properly recording after our preseason run, and we've already got one sponsor. We're lining up a few more, more on that to come. But it's already been a crazy response. Lindsay, are you ready for your bar questions?
Ooh, I'm so ready. I'm gonna knock it out of the park.
Blake, pay attention. I'm gonna be asking you which answer you want to. These are much shorter.
Okay.
So they're a little more technical, but they're a little shorter. The owner and operator of a mobile phone repair business testified as a lay witness that a particular phone model's components were manufactured in China.
Okay.
What, if anything, is required to lay the foundation for the witness's testimony?
Oh, wow. With no context on the case.
Yep.
I'm a little unclear where to start.
These are pure procedural questions.
Okay, interesting.
So,
what are my multiple choice answers, please?
Okay. Answer A, a lay witness's testimony does not require a foundation. B, a showing that the witness saw the components being manufactured in a Chinese facility. C, a showing that witnesses had formal training in mobile phone repair. Or D, a showing that the witness's knowledge and opinion were based on the witness's personal experience in the industry.
Jeez. Okay. I have very little background knowledge to go on this one, so my answer is a little bit more of a guess than I would like. But I'm leaning towards D, that final one. It doesn't make sense to me that the government would require him to prove that he had training in mobile phone repair. He could have seen the parts himself, seen the manufacturing, but...
Well, I'll caution you because it says nothing about the government. We don't know what type of case this is in.
Okay, thank you. Would you please reread me the question?
Yep.
Thank you.
That's why I'm picking these, because they're very short, but they're very punchy.
This is a thinker.
The owner and operator of a mobile phone repair business testified as a lay witness, a non-expert witness.
Okay,
that a particular phone model's components were manufactured in China. What, if anything, is required to lay the foundation for the witness's testimony?
Okay, now that we go through this again, I feel as though since he's specifically a lay witness, there's no idea that this man is a professional or a qualified in this one particular thing. So he's a lay witness. So I'm assuming that means that no basis would need to be formed because he's a lay witness, whereas there would if he was, I forget the word, expert.
An expert.
So, answers one more time, please, and then I'll be ready.
A lay witness's testimony does not require a foundation.
Okay.
B, a showing that the witness saw the components being manufactured in a Chinese facility. C, a showing that the witness had formal training in mobile phone repair. And D, a showing that the witness's knowledge and opinion were based on the witness's personal experience in the industry.
A, locking it in.
That's
my answer. Blake,
we're gonna do a sound check with Blake. Blake, what's your answer?
Check. We got you. What do you think?
I'm going to say A as well.
You're going to say A as well. Okay.
Audience, Blake, our sound engineer, is locking in A. A lay witness's testimony does not require a foundation. We're going to go backwards and start eliminating incorrect answers first.
Okay, and tease us with it.
Answer C is incorrect. A showing that the witness had formal training in mobile phone repair.
Yeah, because he's a lay witness.
Yeah, because showing a witness had formal training in mobile phone repair is not required.
No.
It's not germane to the question of foundation. So we're just eliminating that. Oop. B is incorrect because showing that the witness saw the components being manufactured is not required in the question of foundation. It may be relevant to the questions of the case.
Sure.
So that leaves us with D and A. A is incorrect.
Ah, damn it.
Because as noted above, all evidence requires foundation of all kinds. It was sort of a trick question.
Okay.
Now,
At least we got it wrong together, Blake. Thank you for participating.
Thank you, Blake. I'm back in the sound booth. Both expert witnesses and lay witnesses need to have some sort of foundation to introduce their relevancy.
Okay.
Expert witnesses are different, which is a question for another time because they can opine more than a lay witness. Answer D is correct, showing that the witness's knowledge and opinions were based on the witness's personal experience in the industry. A party introducing evidence must first lay the foundation for that evidence, which is to say all types of evidence require some sort of foundation.
Okay.
To lay the foundation for testimony from a lay witness, which is to say a non-expert, a party must show that the witness has personal knowledge of the matter to testify on.
Okay,
You can the biggest and there's other differences, but the biggest difference between lay witnesses and expert witnesses is lay witnesses can testify to anything they have personal expertise on, like personal experience.
Yeah, anything relevant to the case.
But experts, presuming their testimony is allowed by the judge, who call balls and strikes, that's what they do. They can opine opinion. So they can go beyond their personal experiences.
They use their justification as expert knowledge allows us to
go beyond the bounds of the facts.
Cool.
But this was crucially a lay witness, which means the boundary is their personal experiences.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. Answer D is correct.
You know, I think if it wasn't going to be A, D was my second guess. So I'm like almost right anyways.
You fucking locked it in.
Yeah.
You fucking locked. Well, this also goes back to remember that train?
Yes.
That train where the witness,
I think about that one
the
sometimes.
witness was a lay witness. She was just a neighbor who talked about how train horns honk. She was not testifying as to her expert as a train expert. She's just saying, within my knowledge and personal experiences, this is what happens every time a train crosses the crossing guard. And then it's up to the jury to see whether or not they believe them. The jury is the trier of fact. Judges are the trier of law. One determines how the rules work and to ensure a fair trial. That's really all judges do. And then the jury decides who is credible and who to believe. So unless it's a bench trial, and bench trials are where it's just the judge. There's no jury. Judge becomes everyone. Judge decides who to believe and what evidence to allow before the court.
Lots of power.
Yes, that's a lot of power. There's something called like motions in limine where when it comes to trial, the movies and TV shows are always fucking horseshit because they're litigating evidentiary matters in front of the bench, in front of the jury the day of trial. All that stuff would be worked out weeks in advance.
Yeah.
Judge would rule on what evidence everyone can see and what the prosecution can use and what the defense can use. And if all the discovery was handled properly, that's what judges do. And here, that's how it all fits in. I have a lot more. We're going to be shifting a little bit more to foundational procedure questions to see if we can equip you for those scenarios. Lindsay, are you ready for your second question? We're doing 2 questions today.
I'm going to give it a try.
Without provocation, a defendant discharged a firearm multiple times in a populated public park. One of the bullets struck and killed a park visitor.
Yikes.
Under the common law, did the defendant act with malice and aforethought?
Ooh, okay. I've got a little bit of background guesswork to do here. The first is the difference between murder and manslaughter. And I know that intent is the difference there. If you would set out with a goal of killing, then that's murder. But if it was an accident, that's manslaughter, I believe. And so, since he simply fired the shots at the park, the context of the question gives us zero intent or aforethought. So that's what I'm feeling so far. What are my answers, please?
Your answer options are A, yes, because the defendant discharged the firearm without provocation. B, yes, because the defendant acted with reckless indifference to human life. C, no, because the defendant did not intend to kill anyone. Or D, no, because the defendant did not intend to cause serious bodily harm. And I'll give you a hint. So this is a little bit tricky because this is asking about common law. Do you know what common law is?
I don't believe I do.
Okay, perfect. So common law, there's statutory law, which is basically just laws passed by the legislature.
Okay.
And then there's common law, which is a conglomeration of rules and standards imposed by court decisions over time.
Oh.
So it was never actually passed by a legislature, and that body of law is called common law.
Okay.
It derives and has a history from Great Britain, which they have the Westminster system, which is there's the common law system and then the civil law system. We don't have time to get into the difference, but those are like different structures between the two common types of governments on Earth.
Gotcha.
We have the common law system because our heritage comes from certain countries in Europe that are very dominant in our legal sphere today.
Hey.
And we are asking for the common law standards, which I have not taught you.
That's true.
and actually, we're asking about the common law standard, not for whether or not this is murder, but whether or not did the defendant act with malice and malice aforethought.
Okay, this is interesting.
Yes.
I like this question. And I was thinking that the answer was going to be no when I first started thinking about all of this. But when you read me the answers, B stuck out in my head because it was he acted with reckless abandon or something. Can you read me?
And reading B?
Yes, please.
Yes, because the defendant acted with reckless indifference to human life.
Yeah, firing a gun at a park seems pretty heckin' reckless to me. And that is the maximum guesswork that I have here.
Are you locking in B?
I'm locking it in. I'm locking in B on this one.
All
Blake.
right, we'll get a sound studio weigh in from the peanut gallery. Blake, what's your answer?
What you think?
Yeah, I agree because it sounds pretty reckless.
Yeah, it sounds pretty reckless, right? B. Blake agrees with me that B.
Audience, Blake is also locking in B. B is correct.
Yes, we did it this time.
So I'll start by eliminating the incorrect answers. Option A, because the defendant discharge the firearm without provocation, is incorrect because the lack of provocation is not really probative.
Right. Yeah, that's not the question.
It's not relevant to the question, so we can easily strike that.
Mm-hmm.
C and D are both incorrect because the defendant may act with malice aforethought even if the defendant did not intend to kill or injure anyone, provided the defendant's actions subject others to a high probability of grave risk or death. It's a recklessness standard. Option B, yes, because the defendant acted with reckless indifference, is correct. Under the common law, malice aforethought includes a variety of mental states: intent to kill, intent to cause serious bodily harm, and reckless indifference to the value of human life. So it's a recklessness standard.
Yeah, that final one.
Additionally, it is the defendant's commission of a particular felony results in death. Malice aforethought may be imputed on the defendant. So this is one of the, remember when I'm always talking about how I find there are always really complicated procedural reasons why an answer is correct, and I always try and avoid them. This is a great example of a question that is needlessly complicated.
Okay.
Basically, yes, because the defendant acted with reckless indifference to human life. That's why this is malicious. Because it's an extreme recklessness.
Extreme recklessness. For sure. Jeez.
It generally means that the defendant knowingly subjected others to a high probability of grave risk without any concern of whether death or harm was likely to result.
Yup.
That's also, you also commonly see that you called out manslaughter, which is like the baby's first murder, basically, which is basically to say you cause someone to die in most states.
Fault, but it wasn't premeditated.
It was It's not that it was premeditated. You weren't even trying. So in general, every state has different standards, but in general, it's manslaughter. And that manslaughter is like you just did something so stupid that it was insanely reckless and you got someone killed.
Okay.
Murder, it's usually something like murder 2 is like you killed someone, it was intentional, but you didn't pre-plan it. Like in that moment you tried to kill him.
Passion.
And then and then murder 1 is like you premeditated this, you meant to kill him, you killed him.
I see.
But there's also some middle ground. Like there are some states that have statutes that let you be charged with like the equivalent of like murder 3, where it's like more severe than manslaughter is just extreme recklessness in most places. But well done, one for one. So we've got an even score now.
We'll take it.
Yes,
we'll take it.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
I'm glad that he would be punished. That's my final thought.
Yeah.
I believe that this is the correct law.
The podcast.
I agree.
Yeah. The friend of the podcast is anyone who does not discharge firearms in public places.
Absolutely.
Everybody, thank you for joining us for another week. We're on a mission to make the law a little bit understandable and more accessible.
Yes.
Pledge as low as $5 on gossipwithoutprejudice.com can keep our work free for everyone forever. It would mean the world if you could share our work, leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It's how we reach more people. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.